Clouds of paper wait for me. Seagulls scavenge still ice cream. Worries vanish within my dream. I left my soul there, down by the sea. I lost control here, living free. I left my soul there, down by the sea. I lost control here, living free. Fishing boats sail past the shore. No singing, Mayday anymore. The sun is shining.
Words are hard, and it's especially important that we choose our words carefully when we're talking about music to students and when we're thinking about music with ourselves, whether it's practicing or teaching or even sometimes performing. Choosing your words is crucial to understanding abstract ideas, because words can often invoke certain thoughts and feelings, emotions, and mental images in your brain, and all those things combined can help you better grasp an abstract concept. And for a lot of beginner drummers, musicians in general, abstract concepts are things like, am I playing too fast? Am I playing too slow? Are my diddles too crushed? Are my diddles too open? Sometimes you can't tell. So I often preach to my students that the words I use when I teach are very intentional. I always try to choose my words carefully. So, with that, sticks up, shut up, choose your words carefully. I don't think a lot of people put a lot of thought into what words they choose when they're teaching something. When I got to college, it became more apparent that certain words and certain phrases and certain analogies had a better impact on me than other ones did. Have you ever made an analogy or a metaphor that just flew by everybody and they were just like, that was a terrible metaphor or terrible analogy? And then you go, yeah, that was pretty awful, but it made sense in my head. That's because for you, it made sense, right? And for other people, it didn't land. And that's totally fine. And as a teacher, that's what we have to do. We have to try to come at our students from different angles using different words and different phrases and different analogies to help them understand, to make that light bulb go off in their brain. So I want to do a quick story time. I was at the University of North Texas, and we're under this tree, like we always were. I think it was just the normal spring line at North Texas, the spring drum line. And Paul Rennick was the teacher. We're drumming, we're practicing, we're learning some stuff, and there's no pressure. Literally a class at North Texas you could take, and you would just drum with Paul for a semester in a drum line, and you would just stand under a tree and work some stuff out. One day I was having a really hard time with my attacks. And for those of you who don't know, the attack would be the very first note that you play. The section leader counts it off, the exercise or whatever you're playing. And I kept missing the attack. I was early, I was late. I was so in my head that I just could not get it. I just couldn't get it, which was weird to me because, more often than not, I was used to not thinking about it and just playing, right? And just kind of owning it and coming in and everything was okay. But for whatever reason that day, I didn't know where I was at. I was a soup sandwich. My brain was just fried, and for some reason I could not get the attack. So Paul comes up to me and he says, I want you to think about a trough that like animals eat out of. So like pigs or whatever, like there's a trough and there's this long sink looking thing that's if you look at it from the side, it's like U-shaped and it's deep. It's really, really deep. And he said, I want you to think about this trough, and I want you to imagine that I've taken a ball and I've put it on one edge of the trough and let go. Think about what the ball does. And so I'm like in my brain, I'm going, okay, the ball comes down one side, it rolls down to the bottom, and it comes up the other side, and it rolls up like this, it goes like this. And as I'm thinking about this, as I'm imagining this in my head, Paul could probably read it on my face. But as I'm imagining this in my head, he says, I want you to imagine that ball settling down towards the bottom. And then he walked away, and we played the exercise again. And I nailed the attack. What did he say? Did he give me any kind of technical thing to think about? Like, oh, you got to think about your stick coming up on the end of one, or you got to do this with your hand, or you got to think this, you got to do this with your fingers, or you got to line it up with this and that, or you got to listen to the section leader's count. None of that. He didn't give me any kind of technical, standard, what you would expect from any other teacher. He gave me this amazing analogy that essentially put me into a settling mode, a settling mood. He settled my brain. And he gave me that image of settling right down at the center. On one side, I'm early. On the other side, I'm late. And right there in the middle, I'm centered. Gravity takes me down and it settles down in the center. And I nailed the attack. The psychology of what you say to your students, and in some cases, what you say to yourself, is incredibly important. That's what I learned that day. I learned that the words we choose when talking about drumming concepts don't have to be the necessarily obvious things that a lot of teachers would say. Drums, it's off, you're off. Hit the like button if you've ever had that said to you. That is one of my biggest pet peeves of all time. And I didn't realize it until maybe high school, definitely college. Off doesn't mean anything. And with regards to teaching someone, don't use the word off. Be specific. Tell them what they're doing. Are they in front of the beat? Are they behind the beat? Were those rolls, were those diddles crushed? Or were they too open? Off means nothing. And it won't help the player fix the actual problem. Congratulations, band director or whoever you are. You identified that there's a problem. It sounded weird to you and you called it out. Good job. No. You need to tell me what it was. If I can't identify what the problem was, you need to tell me what the problem was. So if you're out there and you're teaching, do not tell your students they're off. Whether that relates to pitch or rhythm, tell them what the problem is. At the very least, tell them what the problem is. Are you fast? Are you slow? Are you sharp? Are you flat? Whatever it is, tell them what the problem is if you can identify it. Then, to take it to the next level, tell them how to fix it. The words that you choose are crucial in the way that your student perceives what they're doing. And every student's going to be different, right? But the vast majority of them will be kind of in the same ballpark. Word association is kind of what I'm talking about here. It's very, very powerful. Sometimes it's obvious, right? When I say it's cold outside, you know exactly what I mean. But the interesting thing, and the thing that I'm kind of talking about and pointing to today, is when I say it's cold outside, think to yourself, what kind of feeling does that conjure up? What kind of memory does that conjure up? What kind of emotion does that conjure up? That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. And so when we're trying to explain difficult concepts to students, whether it's talking about, especially with drummers, we're talking about timing, things like timing, that's a big one. Dynamics to a lesser extent. When we're using different words, we have to find a way to make it impactful for that student. So when I say those words, it means something to them and they go, oh, I get it. Let's do a little bit of word association. I want you to think about what comes to mind when I say these words. Warm and cool. Hot and cold. Soft and loud. Bright and dark. What kinds of stuff comes into your head? Let's take warm and cool. When I think of warm, I think of warm light. Maybe it's because I've been learning this, videography, photography stuff lately. I've been thinking warmer lights and cooler lights, right? I think of warm and cool in terms of light and lighting. Warmer lights have a little bit more of a gold hint to them. Cooler lights are a little more blue, and look at that. I've associated with a color now. Word association's crazy. Maybe warm to you means it's temperature-wise. It's warm outside. It's not hot. Hot would be like it's sweat. You're sweating. Warm is like, oh, okay, I can deal with it. Cool is like, it's nice. Got a nice breeze maybe, right? Cold, that means you've got a jacket on and you're freezing and it's not good. Freezing is even worse than cold, right? So even with that, there are multiple ways. Oh, here's another one. Warm sound. What does it mean for a snare drum to have a warm tone? Can a snare drum have a cool tone? How about a crisp tone? What does that conjure up for you? Some words are gonna work really well with the vast majority of students, right? Like a phrase that you guys like to hear me say on this channel is contact without pressure. That's such a beautiful way of saying it, and that's not mine, by the way. That is not my phrase. It's just the best way of describing what it is we do with regard to the approach in holding a stick. I don't tell my students to squeeze the stick. If I say squeeze, what does that mean to you? What are you thinking in your head? For me, when I hear the word squeeze, I think like a bear hug. You ever have someone come up to you and give you a bear hug and they squeeze the crap out of you and you can't breathe? That's what I think of squeezing. It's got that restrictive quality about it, the word squeeze, right? If I say cradle or even gently cradle, what does that mean to you? You think of maybe a baby, cradling a baby gently. You're not squeezing that baby, right? You're gently cradling the baby. So when I say cradle the stick, that means that you're holding it close and you're not going to drop it, but you're also not squeezing it, right? You're not clamping down on it. Even that word, clamp, clamping down. When you're practicing by yourself and you're not in a teaching situation, teach yourself what some of these concepts are, right? Early and late, those are two of the biggest ones. If you know the difference between early and late, and you can hear, more importantly, hear the difference between early and late. What's an early attack? What's a late attack? That's huge. You can find that and you can recognize it every single time. Don't say off, say early. Hey, that was early. I was early, right? So in your practice time, really try to figure out and identify which one it is. Is it early? Is it late? And then from there, start to build a vocabulary of words that help you understand how to fix it. Because if you understand how to fix it, now you can develop a vocabulary of words to help someone else fix it. So in your practice time, you need to start to identify early and late, fast and slow. Those are the four major ones that you really need to figure out so that when you get to rehearsal, whether you're the student or the teacher, you can identify those things and fix them. Because the first step in fixing it is identifying it. If nobody says what the actual problem is, i.e. off, if someone says off, hey, it's off, that doesn't mean anything. But if someone says, oh, I was early, right? Or hey, you were early. Oh, and then you can, if that player knows what early means, they know how to fix it, right? So when you're practicing by yourself, really try to start to identify the differences between early, late, fast, and slow. Those are the four major ones that you really need to focus on so that you can be a better student and a better teacher. As a teacher, it is your job to ensure that your students have a good vocabulary of words to use so that when you speak to them, they understand what it means. So sometimes you'll have to teach them what these words mean. And not all of them are going to be inherent. When I say, hey, your diddles are too closed, a lot of people might not understand what that means right off the bat. You may have to tell them, that means each diddle is too close. The notes of the diddle are too close together. When you go right, it's too close. I need it to be open, more open. Closed means crunched down, too close together. Those diddles are too close together. Open means getting further apart, right? Opening and closing the gap between notes. So you've taught them two words. You've taught them open and closed. Later on, when you say, hey, I need you to close down, those diddles are a little too fat. They understand what you're saying. So as a teacher, you have to make sure that your students understand the words that you're using. Because again, not all of them are going to be inherent. You're going to have to teach them a useful vocabulary. It's always safe, where possible, to err on the side of musical terms. Now, when it comes to like one-on-one teaching, private lessons, stuff like that, this is where I really, really enjoy this topic. Not only did I learn a lot of things from drumming with Paul, but I've also been able to experiment with my own style. And I've noticed that the less I say in the beginning, the less I have to fix later. How many of you remember your first drum teacher on the first day hitting you with all kinds of information? All right, we're gonna hold the stick this way, we're gonna do this, your finger's gonna be there, your thumb's gonna be there, you're gonna wrap your fingers around, you're gonna move your wrist this way, you're gonna hit the drum right in the center, and your angles are gonna be like this and not this and like this and like this, and we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna hit it, and it's gonna rebound, and we're gonna do all the things. Oh, and by the way, these are eighth notes, these are quarter notes, these are 16th notes, and we're gonna do right, 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 and left, left, left. That's a lot. That's overwhelming. When people come into a drum lesson, whether they know it or not, they kind of already know something. The thing that they know is what a drummer looks like. I don't need to tell the drummer, the new student, that, the beat of the stick is what we use to hit the drum with. I mean, you look at it, it's pretty obvious. I've never once in my 20 years of teaching have I ever had a student on the first day come in and start using the butt of the stick. It's obvious that we got to use the beat of the stick. They've seen cartoons, they've seen television shows, they've seen all kinds of things with drummers probably at this point in their lives. And even if they hadn't, that end is different. It looks specialized. It looks like it's there for a reason. So I'm going to hit the drum with that end and not the butt, right? So I don't have to explain that. That's one thing I don't have to talk about. The second thing I don't have to talk about is what it means to play a note or a group of notes. If you've never ever played drums before, and I say play 8 notes, you kind of already know what that means, right? I don't have to tell you what the word note means. I don't have to tell you what the word play means. This is literally what I do with brand new students. They come in, they sit down, and I introduce myself, and we talk for a second, and then I say, all right, I want you to play 8 notes with your right hand. And that's it. That's all I have to say. 100% of the time, they use the correct end of the stick, right? They use the side with the beat, right? The beat is hitting the drum. I don't have to tell them that. It works. And when they play 8 notes, that's where I get slight variances, right? Sometimes they play 8 notes pretty evenly spaced, and it's pretty good. Sometimes they just play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because they're counting, right? And they don't have any concept of spacing between notes just yet, and that's totally fine. In case you haven't noticed, the other thing that I have not told my students yet at this point is how to hold the sticks. I didn't say anything about how to hold the stick. I didn't say anything about how to hit the drum. The lack of words in this case is, in a lot of ways, more powerful than giving them all the words all at once. Part of the reason why that is because the student gets immediate gratification. They don't walk into the room and I say, okay, do this with your finger, do this with your thumb, do this with your wrist, do this with that, and you got to use it with this hand, and you're gonna blah, blah, blah. I don't hit them with all that. They come in because they sign up for lessons, they come in, they sit down, they start playing immediately. I haven't told them anything. Just play 8 notes with your right hand. Sometimes I just say play 8 notes and see what happens. Just to see. And I will say, most of the time, that student comes in and they play 8 notes relatively well. And then from there, all I have to do is make minor adjustments on either the way they're holding the sticks, right? Like maybe they're choked up too far, maybe they're holding it way too far back. Most of the time, I don't talk about grip until, 4 or 5 lessons in, depending on the student, because I don't need their minds filled with information at this point. I need them to get the basics of hitting this thing, feeling the energy of the stick, right? I might make small corrections like, let's next time, let's try to use a little more wrists instead of your arm. That's a typical one. A lot of beginners will start using their arms. If I don't say anything, they'll just use their arms. And that's totally fine. So second lesson in, I might say, all right, this time I want you to try it. Do a little bit, with your wrist instead of your arm. Less is more in some instances. Sometimes you don't need to say as much as you think you do. Because if you don't say everything, you might find that you have less to fix later on. All this talk about words and how we use them and the things that we say, it's not about big words and it's not about, complicated words. It's about the most effective word. Learn your student or students and figure out what works for them. That's part of the joy of being a teacher, at least for me, is it's an endless puzzle to solve. I have many students and they all learn slightly differently, right? And different words mean different things to them. And so to get through to them, to get them to play the thing that I need them to play, I might have to say one thing to one student and a slightly different thing to another student just to get them to do the same thing. Learn your students, learn the effective words, any kind of word that you think will work in putting the right image, the right thought into the student's head. That's your goal. And if you can do that, then you're going to be a great teacher. All right, I think that's it for today. I know that that was a little bit of a departure from my normal style of videos. If you have ideas on words or teaching techniques that I haven't covered, definitely leave a comment and I'll try to make a video about that as well. If you like this video, go ahead and play an eighth note on the like button. If you did not like this video and you think that I'm dumb, please play 2 eighth notes on the dislike button. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell icon. It's gonna help this channel and actually others like it. If you do all that stuff for me, then the algorithm is probably gonna feed you a lot more stuff like me. So let's all help each other in becoming better drummers and better musicians. All right, that's it. I'll see you in the next one.